So I wanted to talk about, there were two examples in the persuasion field that are fascinating, and they both involve this Mark Rich situation. I'm sorry, Seth Rich. What's his name? Yeah, it's about Seth Rich. I don't know who Mark Rich is, except in my imagination. All right, so we're going to look at two things now that we got enough people on here. I'm going to show you a clip of Julian Assange being interviewed in some overseas interview talking about what they're doing about Seth Rich's murder. Now, what you're going to do is look for Julian's tell that he's lying.
Donald Trump has had a disastrous few weeks. If you look at a miracle in the American political lexicon, there's such a thing as the October surprise.
All right, watch
the
this.
Stuff that you're sitting on is an October surprise in there. Do you even know what you're sitting on?
Watch this.
Wikileaks never sits on material. Whistleblowers go to significant efforts to get us material, and often very significant risks. As a 27-year-old works for the DNC, who was shot in the back, murdered
That's Seth Rich.
just 2 weeks ago for unknown reasons as he was walking down the street in Washington. So
that was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No,
Watch this.
there's no finding. So
What are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
Yeah, what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that our sources take risks, and they become concerned to see things occurring like that.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean,
Watch this.
We don't comment on who our sources are.
Why make the suggestion about a young guy being shot in the streets of Washington?
Yeah, why make that suggestion?
Because we have to understand how high the stakes are in the United States, and that our sources are, our sources face serious risks. That's why they come to us, so we can protect their anonymity.
But it's quite something to suggest a murder. That's basically what you're doing.
Well, others have suggested that. We are investigating to understand what happened in that situation with Seth Rich.
Others have suggested
I think it is a concerning situation. There's not a conclusion yet. We wouldn't be willing to state a conclusion, but we are concerned about it. And more importantly, a variety of Wikileaks sources are concerned when that kind of thing happens.
Donald Trump has had a disaster.
All right, so there you go. Now, when you watch that, yeah, I know a lot of the people on this Periscope are, pro-Trump, but even if you weren't pro-Trump, isn't he confirming that Seth Rich was a source for WikiLeaks? It would be impossible to read that any other way. Right? Is there anyone on here who thinks he didn't just confirm it? Even one person? Yeah. So here's the interesting situation that Assange was in, if you want to understand the context. So he said at one point that they never reveal their source, even after the person has passed. All right. So WikiLeaks wants to keep to its claim that it never reveals its source. But it has a conflicting interest in this case, because they also want to offer a reward to make it harder to kill their sources. So he can't do both things. So he tries to cut it down the middle by offering a reward while not confirming that it's his source, because they don't confirm sources. But what the hell else could it be? He doesn't just randomly pick people and say, well, let's randomly give this guy let's put a reward on this case, just in case. All right, so that's your first one. So in my opinion, that's confirmed. There's, I suppose you could talk me out of it with some kind of new facts in the future, but nothing's ever looked more confirmed. Rarely will you ever see anything in the news that's as clear as that. Most things you think are facts are not nearly as clear as this. This is as clear as you could get. All right. And by the way, Assange is not trying to hide it in this interview. He really isn't. He's actually trying to give you the impression that, okay, we don't reveal our sources, but wink, 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 wink. Remember, we don't reveal our sources, but it sure would be good if you knew he was our source, so that this would all make sense to you. Wink, 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 wink. All right, we get it, Julian. We get it. All right, now let's look at, there's another story in the news today on the same topic, which is fascinating that there would be two of these in the same topic. And I'm going to cue up the interview. This came from a Fox News affiliate, and then
Fox 5 has learned there is
they're going to move to the Investigator.
These new information from the family's private investigator suggests there is tangible evidence on Seth Rich's laptop that confirms he was communicating with Wikileaks prior to his death. Now the question is,
now before we go further, let me know what you're hearing. So you're going to hear the investigator, a private investigator, who was looking into this Seth Rich situation, allegedly for the family, but then there's some news today that maybe somebody else was actually paying him. And he says a few things, and they're separate things. One of the things he says is that that he has confirmed that Seth Rich is the source of some of the WikiLeaks emails. He looks like he's telling the truth when he says that. He also says that he was told that the laptop might have some information and it's either held by the police or FBI or somebody. That also looks completely true, all right? But then the last thing he's going to say, and I'll show it to you in a moment, is that somebody in the police department told him that they had the order to stand down, all right? So watch for that part and see if it looks as true to you. Now you'll see that he shakes his head no when he's telling you the story, all right? But I'm going to explain that after you see it, all right? So
why has DC Police as a lead agency on the investigation for the past 10 months insisted this was a botched robbery when till this day there is no evidence to suggest that? The Rich family hired Rod Wheeler, a former MPD homicide detective, to run a parallel investigation into their son's death. Wheeler says he believes there's a cover-up and the police department has been told to back down from the investigation.
All right, now watch him for credibility.
The police department nor the FBI has been forthcoming. They haven't been cooperating at all. I believe that the answer to solving his death lies on that computer.
Look how
which I believe is either at the police department
he's
or
shaking his head
at
yes.
the FBI. I've been told
yes,
both.
yes.
But you have sources at the FBI.
Watch, his head was yes when he said
there
that.
is information
Yes.
Sure.
would link
So he believes this
Seth
part.
Rich
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's confirmed. Actually, I have a source inside the police department.
Now watch this.
That has looked at me straight in the eye and said, Rod, we were told to stand down in this case, and I can't share any information with you. Now, that's highly unusual for a murder investigation, especially from a police department. Again, I don't think it comes from the chief's office, but I do believe there is a correlation between the mayor's office and the DNC, and that's the information that's going to come out tomorrow.
All right. The new break.
So I don't want to make too much of the head shaking stuff, because that's not science, right? If you were looking for a lie, you look for stuff like people shaking their head opposite of what their words are. So when he was saying the police have the laptops, he was saying, oh yeah, they have the laptops. When he was telling the story about a source telling him in the police department that they were told to stand down, his head goes the other way. Now, it could be, as others have suggested, that he's just saying that, he's sort of mimicking what the other person said, that they told us to stand down, meaning he's mimicking how the other person was behaving. But here's the thing. Let me give you some context. Whoever the source was, let's say it was a police officer, that person is also an employee with a boss. If you've ever been around a world where there are both employees and bosses, What is the most common thing that every employee tells you about their boss? What's the most common complaint that the creator of Dilbert hears from every employee about their own boss? My boss told me to work on the wrong thing. Right? It's the most common complaint, is my boss is an idiot, and he's telling me to work on the thing I don't want to work on, and to not work on the thing I do want to work on. He told me to stand down. That's every boss, every employee, every job. My boss is telling me to work on the wrong stuff. Now, by the time this story is told, it's easy for that to morph into, yeah, the boss told me to stop working on this project because maybe other people are working on it. Maybe the police were told to stand down because the FBI was looking into it. Maybe this one employee was told to stand down because better employees are working on it, and it's none of your business. All right? Did I just shake my head as I said that? I probably did. So I would divide this report from the private investigator into two parts, credibility-wise. Now, we don't know the truth, so I can't say for sure what is true and not, all right? But I can say how he looks in terms of credibility. Now, I would say that the first part of his interview looked completely credible, and doesn't mean it's true, but he looked very credible. But when he got to the second part, his head was shaking. That's a flag. It's not a confirmation of anything, but it's enough of a flag that you should say, wait a minute, let's pay a little more attention to this part, because there's some head shaking going on that seems out of context. Doesn't mean it's not a confirmation of anything. Yeah, my head shook too. And that's my point, is that the head shaking, both with Assange and with this investigator, these are not science in the sense of anybody can look at this and it's 100% confirmation. It is a flag, though. When you see it, you should sort of pay attention a little bit more. And I think the part about one police officer saying we were told to step down just sounds to me like every disgruntled employee who wanted to work on something and the boss wanted them to work on something else. And then it turns into, it starts out from, well, I'd rather you work on something else. And then by the time the story gets told twice, it's like, he told me to stand down. There's something behind this. I'm standing down. You know who else was told to stand down? Everybody who wasn't working on it, because they probably all wanted to work on it. It was the coolest case going. What would be cooler than that case? Don't you think there were, even if they were working on it, don't you think several of them would have been told to stand down? So it could be true, because like I say, the first part of the interview, the private investigator, he looked quite credible to me, just in terms of his demeanor. That doesn't mean he was right. I'm just saying he looked credible. And then the second part, by its nature, it's a little harder to believe because employees talk that way just normally. So I would say there's a little less credibility, which doesn't mean it's false, but there's less credibility you should assign to that part. Depends if the stand down came from the boss or the mayor's office. If it came from the mayor's office, it went through a boss. And yeah, you just can't trust employees talking about their boss, just in general. You just can't. Right. The head shaking could be disbelief at the subject. Oh, disbelief that, how could anybody ask somebody to stand down? Yeah, it could be. Yeah, so there are lots of ways that could be a false positive. I agree. I'm not the biggest fan of the body language is proof of things, but body language does raise flags, right? When you see somebody like this, it could be that they're, not open to what you're saying, but it could be because they're cold. You can never know for sure. All right, I just wanted to talk about those two examples because they were fun.